During the COVID time, like several others, I felt really lonely. And I'm one of those guys who actually learn more from people than a browser. So I like meeting people and hearing their perspectives, lessons that they have learned, because then I can internalize it more. So that's where COVID was really bad from that perspective. And so I was thinking about, as soon as the COVID started going down, I started thinking about getting friends together, founder friends together in my house.
You are listening to The Sure Shot Entrepreneur, a podcast for founders with ambitious ideas. Venture capital investors and other early believers tell you relatable, insightful, and authentic stories to help you realize your vision. Welcome to The Sure Shot Entrepreneur. I'm your host, Gopi Rangan. My guest today is Shreesha Ramdas. Shreesha is a good friend of mine. He is a prolific entrepreneur, successful serial entrepreneur, and also an angel investor. And more recently, he started a community called Funda for founders. We're going to talk about his journey, what excites him about entrepreneurship. We're going to talk to him about his angel investments, and we will certainly talk about the community that has formed at Funda, Founders Helping Founders. Shreesha, welcome to the Sure Shot Entrepreneur.
Thank you so much, Gopi. It'll be fun chatting with you.
Let's start with you. You grew up in India, you moved to the US, and you've been in Silicon Valley for more than a couple of decades. And in the early days, you were at Yodlee, one of the most successful stories we've heard coming out of Silicon Valley. And since then, you've been on an entrepreneurship journey through multiple startups. And now you're a founder at Lumber. And in addition to all of this, you also actively invest as an angel in many startups, 10, 20 plus startups over the years. Walk us through that journey from India to how it all happened in Silicon Valley.
Yeah. Gopi, so growing up in India, we all have shared upbringing. I would say a similar upbringing, which is basically the parents always emphasize watch out every step you take. Embracing risk was not part of the DNA. And so I would say coming to the valley, that aspect changed in a major way. I call generally Valley as Disneyland for all the tech guys, because everywhere you see there's a tech opportunity waiting for you. And this is a place where it teaches you how to take on entrepreneurship, how to be a founder. I was no different. Every fourth guy I met had an idea. Initially, I went from I cannot think about ideas, but I can work for these guys. That slowly transitioned into, hey, I can contribute here and there. And then, eventually it transformed into, I can come up with an idea. I can do something about it. So that completely I would attribute to the valley and meeting all the founders and getting inspired. So when we came out of Yodlee, there was a lot of change happening. Online was going mainstream, the social media was coming online. And so we could see the shift from physical world to online world. And that's what inspired us to get into the marketing, because we felt like marketing from an art was going to get transformed into a science. And whenever science is there, the engineers have a role in it. So that's how I and Shriyari got started with LeadFormix, and that got acquired by Calidus SAP. And then more recently, I started StrikeDeck. That was a customer success platform, continuing the journey that I started with LeadFormix. And that got acquired by Medallia. And then I had this fun journey of being part of a larger team that took Medallia public. And that was inspiring in a lot of different ways. It ticked off a bucket list item of seeing a company go public. And the CEO of Medallia has always been an inspiring figure for me, and him ringing the bell was a big moment. And it inspired again that this can be done again. And so now I'm on to my next startup, which is Lumber. We're leveraging all the lessons and knowledge learned over the years and trying to see how we can grow fast. It's been a great journey so far.
I'm proud to be one of the first investors, if not the first investor in Lumber. You say it in such simple words, but each transition was transformative. Coming from a middle class Indian family where risk is not embraced easily, that changed when you came to Silicon Valley. And when you came to Silicon Valley, like you said, It's Disneyland for techies. And you bump into so many people starting new ideas, new companies. And you started as like, I can contribute. And then you transition to, I can actually create something from scratch. And that was LeadFormix. Once you saw one of those stories go all the way to IPO at Medallia, you got inspired to do that on your own, starting from scratch with lumber. What an exciting journey you've had over the past couple of decades. Compared to when you started LeadFormix, how has the ecosystem changed? And how is it different for you now when you're a founder of Lumber? Fundraising, recruiting, market, customers, talent, technology, many things have changed. And I'm curious to learn from your perspective.
Yeah, so the world I would say is completely different now than back then. Back then, entrepreneurship, I think, was not yet common, though we had one generation of entrepreneurs before us who led the way. And I could think about some names, which is BV Jagdish, who started Exodus, Ram Shriram doing some amazing things with Jungly. We had Pavan Nigam doing Healthy on WebMD. So those were some of the inspiring names. And I remember picking up the Jim Clark's book. I don't know how many of us remember. It was a book called New Thing. Jim Clark was the founder of Silicon Graphics, and he had an entire chapter dedicated to Indian entrepreneurs, and he specifically mentioned IIT, and that was really inspiring to read, and it got us thinking that this can be done, right? So from there, today, if you compare, today Indian entrepreneurs are celebrated in media more than ever before, and so you don't need that inspiration. You have already have that belief, right? So a lot of the founders know that it can be done. It has been done several times. And also the knowledge that's available in terms of content, available on the internet, available through podcast videos. Back then, earlier days, we had to figure all of that ourselves. Now every entrepreneur who starts a journey today understands the importance of content creation, understands the importance of SEO, knows that they have to experiment at a fast pace and let the data guide us. But that was something that we figured out along the way. So that I think has really changed. And also people who we can approach for guidance, that whole pool of experienced entrepreneurs available for us to seek guidance has increased dramatically. And then there are more events happening that bring all these entrepreneurs together, Funda included. So I would say that it's no longer as lonely place as it used to be before. So that has been the dramatic shift.
The community has grown. The community of techies becoming CEOs versus salespeople becoming CEOs, that has changed. The cost of launching a company, going from zero to one, has significantly reduced. It used to be far more difficult. Even to find VCs, pitching to them was very, very different. And it's a lot easier to access investors now. Can we talk about your angel investments? What inspired you to meet founders at early stages and invest in those companies?
Yeah, so my angel investment started back in 2012 after I exited LeadFormix. Fortunately, the first startup that I invested was Workato. And when your first startup does really well, it basically encourages you to keep going. And Workato, I would say, was not a deliberate decision. I happen to know the founders of Workato, started working with them early on in advising them about which target segments to go about, how to launch the initial campaigns, and was very fortunate when the founder asked if I could come in and put in a check. That's how it happened. And that really got me inspired to get going. One selfish reason behind angel investing is that it helps me stay relevant. It helps me stay young. And I say this because the founders that I generally invest, I also try to help them in terms of at least their go to market strategy. And when I'm contributing there, the founders also do not hold back. They ask questions, and you have to be on your toes to answer it. And so that allows you to explore as well. And that's why I said you stay relevant. What you have done as an entrepreneur, for example, 3 years ago, may not be relevant because the environment keeps changing. And so when you are talking to the founders, you understand what are the tactics that are being deployed today. For example, I always know which are the PR agencies that are doing well, because the founders would say that I tried this PR agency, it's working this way, or I support the founder in engaging with the PR agency, and that way I get knowledge, right? And so that's how I've looked at investing. And then along the way, I was fortunate to meet some brilliant founders. For me, when investing, it's all about the founder. I belong to that school of thinking where ideas are dime a dozen, and a good founder eventually will figure out how to make an idea successful. And what do I look in founders? It's basically grittiness and passion. Grittiness because it shows the staying power. But sometimes you have to be patient with ideas. It takes time for an idea to develop. Sometimes the market is not ready for it. For example, you take lumber, Gopi. I have seen a sea change difference in last year and this year in terms of vertical AI. Everybody is chasing vertical AI today, but it was not the case last year. And so sometimes you have to let the market evolve and appreciate the idea. So that's where I would say grittiness is extremely important. How much they believe, is it just an experiment, and at the first sign of the experiment not doing well, will they bail out? I do not like such founders. One of the founder that I've invested, I asked him, what does this idea mean to you? And he said, this is my Olympics. Once in a lifetime I'll get a chance to participate. Now those are the founders we need to celebrate. So that's one. And second is passion. How passionate they are about building and growing the company, how ambitious they are. So that's the another parameter. And then generally the other highlight of what I've done in my investments, Gopi, is I generally decide within 15 to 30 minutes of a conversation with the founder. Because I've spoken to so many different founders, I can see whether they have the grittiness and on the passion in about 15-20 minutes by asking these questions. What does the startup mean for you? Where do you think long term? How this will evolve? Those questions will give a peek into the characteristics of the founder. And I'll say this, not only my startups, but all the startups that I've invested have shaped me and have resulted in doing lumber.
No, angel investment is not only a way to give back to the community, it helps you learn and it keeps you relevant with what's happening in the market, what's happening in the ecosystem. And I see that you've been very actively involved and both contributing to the community and also benefiting from the founders sharing with you what they see in the world. I'm really curious to learn more about how you assess grit, passion when you meet these founders and you make these decisions in 15 to 30 minutes. What questions do you ask? How does the conversation start? And when do you make a decision that, yes, this is a company I want to invest in? Can you give an example of a founder? And I see that you already shared one example, but I want to see a more detailed version of that. How does the conversation start? And how do you make these decisions?
Yeah. So generally, I start with asking the founder to share their background. And I ask them to start their background with stories from childhood, because that gives me an insight into their personality, into what has influenced them and what keeps them motivated. I've heard some amazing stories when I've asked this question. And I've also seen over the 10 years of my investing, started from 2012, how the founders have changed. And I'll give you one latest example is I met a founder from Bangalore who dropped out of bits. And then I thought, okay, must be coming from a privileged background. And that's why he took this decision to drop out of the engineering college, which is not so common in India, as you know. And then I was shocked when I heard his father was an employee in a bank. And not only that, this founder originally came from tier 2 city in India. And so that made me realize that the whole entrepreneurship perspective has changed in a major way in India. I remember the first startup that I did, and I was building an offshore team. We were having tough time, and this is actually in Yodlee. We were having tough time in hiring talent for Yodlee in Bangalore, because the engineers, they said their chances of getting into a marriage diminished if they joined Yodlee, because Infosys was a known brand. Infosys or TCS was a known brand, whereas Yodlee at that time was not known in India. Right? It
Yeah,
didn't
how do you
matter.
explain to your in-laws that you work for a small startup that no one knows about, and the company is so small that we don't even know if the company will survive another year or two. Big brand jobs are more considered more stable, so it's a big risk.
Exactly, exactly. So back to the question, asking them to share their background. Where did they grow up? What do their fathers do? How many people are there in the family? What got them into thinking that they need to start a company? That's really helpful. I also appreciate founders who share that they started a company and it didn't work out and now they are going at it again. And they talk about, like, though their startup failed, it inspired them to continue their journey and they are now a better founders going at it. So that's encouraging and that shows grittiness again. The other questions that I ask is, as I said before, and it has always served me well, is what does this startup mean to you? When will you decide that this startup needs to be sold or this startup needs to continue its journey? And if people are thinking about exit right when they start, then it's a red flag, because you don't sell your company. I always believe you get acquired, and that's not an outcome you should strive for in the journey. If it happens and you feel like it's good for the stakeholders, you make that decision, but otherwise you need to have that ambition upfront of building a long lasting company. Those are the type of the questions I ask. And if the founders are into sports, they demonstrate signs that they have been highly competitive right from the childhood. That again is a good sign that they will be competitive in the startup and they will strive to move it ahead.
This is very interesting. A lot of your questions and the focus of your conversation is about the psychology and the personality of the founders, and very little about what is your product, what is your pricing strategy, what's your go to market. Like those conversations don't take much of your time, and you spend a lot of time starting with childhood, try to understand who the founder is.
Yeah, I'll give you an example. One of the startups that I invested, again, really thankful that the founder gave me an opportunity to be an early check, is Rocketlane. Shri is a founder of Rocketlane, and it's a company that's doing really well. When Shri came to me, and in fact, he's the one who said, "This is Olympics for me." That's the passion that he demonstrated. The idea that he had was about onboarding. And I had just done StrikeDeck customer success. Onboarding was a part of customer success. And I shared with Shri at that time that I don't believe that this idea will work, because customer success TAM is itself being questioned, and onboarding is just a piece of customer success. And so, not sure whether this is the right idea, but I really believed in Sri and the team. Right, they were three founders. They all had complementary skill. One was into go to market, second was engineering, third was product. And all three had done startups before. They had sold to Freshworks, and so they had not done well with their previous startup. But again, the conviction was there that this is a path that we need to take, and we are going to enjoy that.
This is quite interesting. Although the idea was not a slam dunk from your point of view at the time, the founder's conviction really appealed to you. And that's what made you invest in this company.
Absolutely. So Shri, who started with client onboarding idea, then evolved into a professional services automation platform and is now finding a lot of success in his journey.
We have to talk about Funda. It is very important. It's one of the most vibrant communities in Silicon Valley and other places, and other hubs in the US, and also in India and Bangalore and other places. So we should talk about it. It is growing to be an important community for founders, especially of Indian origin. How did you get started with Funda? What does Funda mean to you?
Yeah, so how it got started, Gopi, was during the COVID time, like several others, I felt really lonely. And I'm one of those guys who actually learn more from people than a browser. So I like meeting people and hearing their perspectives, lessons that they have learned, because then I can internalize it more. So that's where COVID was really bad from that perspective. And so I was thinking about, as soon as the COVID started going down, it started thinking about getting friends together, founder friends together in my house. And I started a list. started a Word document and asked people to put in names of like minded founders. And eventually, when I opened the document, it had 80 names. So then I thought about, this is something that cannot be done in my house. It needs to be done at a larger scale. At the same time, over the years of doing startups, I had realized, Gopi, that the world is a very lonely place for founders. And I say this because you have to always be at your vibrant best whenever you are interacting with anybody. You have to show optimism, you have to show confidence, be it your own employees, be it your investors, be it your customers, prospect. You have to always show energy. So I felt like the way you can open up to another founder, ask for guidance or share your feelings, it's beneficial, right? That realization I had actually when, like all the other founders, I consider myself as a strong founder. In the moments of weakness, I used to think it's very important to internalize. But then over the years, talking to friends, I've realized that sometimes, even if you're not seeking perspective, using somebody as a sounding board, hearing yourself talk about issues, problems, sometimes clears your mind. All of these came together to made me realize that there needs to be a larger community where founders find companionship in different ways. So that realization led to the fact that what should the theme of the community should be, like what is the characteristics, and because there are already so many communities out there. And I felt, I was really inspired by Iconic Group, which brings a lot of the Israeli founders. I really appreciate how founders get incubated in Israel and then they transition in a seamless way to the Bay Area, and they do so much well. And I felt that kind of a community did not exist within the Indian community. And there were a lot of communities that were sharing knowledge in and have been inspiring over the years. Thai community, as SAS Bhumi does really good work on the cross border, but there's no community that harness the influence, learnings, experience that we have gathered over a lot of times. So for example, a lot of the events, I did not see repeat entrepreneurs coming to the events. And so that's where that was what inspired Funda. And I was looking for a name that resonated with all the Indians. And because, as you know, India is a big country. There's east, west, south, north. And so Venkatesh, who was my co-founder in Funda, we started brainstorming on different names. And that's where Funda, which, as you know, Gopi, stands for fundamentals. It's a common lingo in India where you say it in two ways. Either you say, "Don't give me funda," which is I already know. Don't teach me fundamentals. Or usually during exams, when you don't have that much time to learn, go through the books and read, you go to your friend and you say, "Give me some funda, give me some fundamentals." And so that I thought was the apt name for the community. And then a bunch of other individuals like yourself, and really appreciate the initial support you showed for the community. I will mention few others like Arun from Storm, BG from 8VC, Joydeep from Canaan. All of them said we will sponsor the Funda community. You don't have to worry about where to host. Let's find a good place. Let's get all these communities together. So that then crystallized that this community needs to have the founders, investors, and operators, all of them come together. And so that's how the Funda community got started.
You started with, let's see who might come together to meet. And then suddenly you had a list of 80 founders. And when you organized the first event, it was a house full. And then you went to a bigger location, you expanded further. Funda event has continued to become bigger and bigger and bigger. Now we have hundreds of people coming to these events. It's become a very strong community. There are first time founders, new founders, junior founders who are learning from senior founders, and founders who are experienced coming in to share their knowledge and experience. And it's also a great community for experienced founders to learn from other experienced founders and experienced investors. It's become a very, very important place to actively engage without any limitations that typically come with, like, who is talking and am I being judged. Instead, founders ask these questions openly, and they are having that friend at a time of need makes a huge difference. Like you said, even voicing your thoughts and opinions and brainstorming with someone, hearing those thoughts come out makes a huge difference in bringing clarity in your mind. And that is a huge value for founders, especially in the early days when the journey is very lonely. Can you give an example of a situation how Funda has helped founders? Couple of examples.
Yeah. As you pointed out, when we started the event, we had about 120 odd founders, VCs come to the event, and that has only grown bigger, right? So last one that we did, we had 480 registrations, and we could only accommodate 200 in our location, and we ended up close to 300 because a lot of the venture capitalist investors called us and asked us to accommodate their portfolio companies, right? So the event, we do events, two events in a year, major events in Mountain View, and then we do event in San Francisco, which is targeted towards the younger and next generation founders who want to join the community. And then more recently, we have initiated a WhatsApp group of all the founders. That's only meant for the founders. That's very active, which is a safe place for the founders to share the ideas and all of that. That's only limited to founders. And then we have other subgroups where we bring in investors as well. So the WhatsApp community is doing really well. And then another initiative that recently started was smaller Zoom meetings with the investors. So that's one way we are serving the community, where investor comes in, shares their perspective, what's their thesis, with a group of 20 to 30 founders. So consider it as almost like a warm introduction to the investor, right? So that's taken off as well. We try to do it once in 2 to 3 weeks. And so a lot of different initiatives have started now. Mahesh Ram, who you and I both know really well, who's head of AI of at Zoom, has been taking a lot of effort in putting together all these initiatives, in channelizing these so that they further encourage the founders to do well in from the community. And then a few examples that I want to highlight is two examples. One was a founder came, and it's really fulfilling, satisfying when founders talk about how they were able to get some deal. And I want to highlight the deal. The Funda actually is an acronym. So it stands for Founders Unite to Network, Deal, and Aspire. And so the deal part is really important. We, from the community, we want founders to find mentors, investors, angel investors. We want investors to find good quality startups, because there are a lot of repeat founders coming as well. We want M&A opportunities to arise. So a lot of the community members are heading M&A in large corporations, and they may find this may be a good way to understand what startups are doing really well. So the deal making is really important, and really fulfilling when one of the founders came to me and they said that they found an opportunity with Walmart. And that's because the Walmart Labs had a representative come in for the Funda event, and he found a startup that could be given a pilot opportunity at Walmart. Similarly, another founder mentioned they got an opportunity with G. So those are the examples where they were able to get an opportunity with a larger company. And recently, an accounts payable startup, very early in their journey, were able to get an opportunity with a larger company, and the larger company embedded the product in their platform, and suddenly the transactions that they were processing skyrocketed. So those are the example where the community helps each other, and is extremely satisfying.
And this community is free for founders. It has now expanded beyond Silicon Valley, and there are events happening in Austin, in Bangalore, and the WhatsApp channel is vibrant with a lot of relevant questions and thoughtful answers from people, the community helping each other. The important thing that I've observed, and I have admired the way Funda has evolved, is this is not a top down organization where 5 or 6 people come together with titles and power and they try to form the organization. This is a groundswell organization, democratically formed from grassroots level, every individual contributes to make Funda happen. I am excited to see how Funda continues to evolve and grow. And this is a great community that has formed. Thanks to you for initiating that. Shreesha, you've spent a lot of time with me today. We could spend another hour or two to talk about various aspects of your involvement in the startup ecosystem, but we have to conclude this conversation. Thanks a lot for spending time with me. Thanks for sharing your practical experiences based on your life. I look forward to sharing your nuggets of wisdom with the world.
Appreciate it, Gopi.
Thank you for listening to The Sure Shot Entrepreneur. I hope you enjoyed listening to real life stories about early believers supporting ambitious entrepreneurs. Please subscribe to the podcast and post a review. Your comments will help other entrepreneurs find this podcast. I look forward to catching you at the next episode.